everyone. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. It is 4 p.m. This is a meeting of the Board of Selectmen along with a joint meeting with the Golf Committee. Is there a motion to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And Golf Committee, if you'd like to call your meeting to order.
Is there a motion to call the golf committee meeting to order?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting will be audio and video recorded. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have the NGF golf presentation. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Flynn over there. He can do the introductions.
Sure, good evening. As we're aware, in the last year, we had the National Golf Foundation come in and do an operational business review of the golf course. A little bit of history way back in the 90s when the town was thinking of even developing and building the course was the National Golf Foundation, along with Mr. Singer here from the National Golf Foundation, and even made the recommendations in the initial report to build the course. So now that we thought approximately 25 years later, as we get ready for the next 25 years, why not bring them in, get their independent third-party review of how they think we're doing, where we are, and where we can set ourselves up to go for the next 25 years. So they've done their report. He was on site for a few days, did a lot of interviews with Dana and Steve in the operations, looking back at the past years of financial performance and rounds played, etc. Review of the conditions of the overall course and amenities, if you want to call it that, around it. And he's got a presentation for us here tonight. So here's Mr. Richard Singer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Singer from National Golf Foundation, and yes, I have been with the National Golf Foundation for more than 30, almost 35 years, so I was around and was part of the team that did the work for the town of Acushnet back in 1997. So it's nice to see it all come together like this. I know that a lot of you are meeting me for the first time, and it's great to be here and to be able to meet all of you. And even though you're meeting me for the first time, I can certainly tell you that you all have been a big part of my life for the last year and a half or so. Through hurricanes and heat waves and elections and everything, here I am, and I'm just glad to be here and to be able to have time with you. As Chairman Hinckley said, I'm the golf guy, right? So I'm here. And part of it also is, welcome to my world. I mean, this is what we do at National Golf Foundation now, the department that I manage. I know that you all, you know the Acushnet River Valley Golf Club. I mean, that's your facility, but my life is going all around the country working with municipalities who have golf courses to help them understand, get their arms around the asset, understand what you have, and understand what it's capable of, what it's not capable of, and some of the best practices and things that work, things that don't work, and help you really plan for the next 25 years of the future of this facility. And I think that's really what this has to be all about. The main thing that we wanted to point out to you as in bold there is that, we're independent. I'm not trying to sell you any other service. I don't design golf courses. We don't design clubhouses, build clubhouses. We don't manage golf courses. We are strictly an independent consultant. And the best what's best for the town of Acushnet and what's best for the Acushnet River Valley Golf Club is really what we're ultimately all about in our work. What you hired us to do was a strategic review of this facility, and recognizing that it's turning 25 years old and that some planning for the future needs to take place, and to think about some of the key infrastructure pieces of the facility that may need to be addressed. We helped you analyze the physical and economic condition of the facility, a little bit about the market environment within which you operate, and basically help you with a pathway to economic success. I mean, ultimately, when we look at municipal golf courses as we do, and it's a big part of what we do, ultimately we don't want to burden the taxpayer of Acushnet. I mean, I think you want to put your best foot forward with a municipal golf facility to be able to show the community that we're operating it as best we can, and we're setting it up for long-term success. I think that's the key. Modernizing the facility, keeping up with the times, I think is an important piece of that. What we found is certainly a lot of very positive things. I mean, this is a popular golf course. It's a great layout. It's flexible. You know, I don't care if you think you're Tiger Woods and you're ready to be on the PGA Tour, or if you're a beginner and you've never picked up a club before in your life. I think that this facility sets up for you with the way that it's organized and the tee positions and all of that. I think it's very flexible. It's the ideal for a public golf course to be that way. Something for everyone is the phrase I believe I used in the report. It's a good location, easy access from a wide geographic area. You get a lot of play from all over New England, from everything that everybody's been telling me. It's certainly a well-managed facility, but it's got a small staff and a small footprint of staff, and it provides limited appeal when it comes to some of the ancillary amenities. The food and beverage facility is lagging behind, and you don't really have the support services that other public golf courses have. The carts are stored outdoors, open to the elements, and there's a small driving range, limited practice amenities. So a great golf course, but with limited support amenities that don't really match. And I think that that's something we certainly wanted to see. The facility is in good condition. But the clubhouse, it's a 25-year-old temporary trailer. It was not really designed to be in place for this long. I don't know. I mean, I've heard the word condemnation thrown around. I'm not an inspector, I can't say that, but I certainly see some things that if you look at it, there are some issues there that probably going to have to be addressed sooner or later. We identified some capital projects that needed to be addressed both on the course and with your support services. On the golf course, some issues such as tees, cart paths, bunkers, the lake banks. I mean, I looked at it again today. It looks better in some of these areas, but I think a few of these issues still remain. I mean, it's not very comfortable driving around that golf course on those cart paths. It's teeth chattering. And as a result of that, a lot of golfers don't want to ride on the cart paths. They're going to ride on the golf course where it's a little smoother, and that causes some other damage to the facility. I think that's certainly something you want to address. A couple of bunkers looked really, kind of ragged in a couple of places. And although the lake banks look better today than they did when we were here last year, I think it may be because the water level is lower. So that might be contributing to that. The other items, the big ones, the $7 or $8 million, $8.5 million line items, that relates to redoing or adding a new clubhouse, or as I would probably better phrase it, a golf service support building. Doesn't necessarily have to be a true clubhouse in the sense of a club, but a golf service support building with an appropriate pro shop, appropriate seating area for people after golf to sit, enjoy, consume beverages, snacks, whatever, and also to properly store your carts, provide adequate and appropriate restrooms, which doesn't really exist there now. I think all of those things are certainly needed. We had estimated that you have about $1.8 million in accumulated retained earnings. I think the number was lower in the report. This has been updated to reflect where you are as of today in November of 2024. A couple of pictures. These are a year old. A couple of these issues have been addressed. I mean, the greens are really good. They were good today and they were good last year. I mean, that's really your key selling point with a golf course. Surveys of golfers have shown that the number one item for a golf course that they appreciate the most is the condition of the greens. And you're really very strong in that area, and you have been for a long time. A couple of other, side areas and thin turf grass conditions in certain locations. Some of these look better today. I have some pictures from that on my phone from today. Looked a little bit better in some areas. Some of these areas with tees, that have been kind of beaten up a little bit by excessive play. Some of these remain. Some of these have been improved. This is kind of a maintenance item that when you have the appropriate staff, you can kind of keep up with and make sure the divots are filled and that the tee markers are rotated on an appropriate basis so that you don't get beat up too bad. But some of the tee boxes are small and narrow, and there isn't a lot of room to rotate it. So you certainly have to be mindful of that. We had recommended some expansion of tee boxes in certain locations on the par threes, something to consider as you look at capital investment. These cart path issues are still present. This is just a select of them. They're all over the golf course. The tree roots underneath it are pushing it up, and it's uncomfortable for golfers to ride around on that. You can see in the pictures that they've roped it off, to try to prevent the golfers from riding in other areas, but that doesn't always work. It's not ideal for a public golf course. I think you certainly want to have good, smooth, modern cart paths. It will help you in a lot of ways. And the bridges, while they're in good condition now, I think you have to, wood has a tendency to kind of decay over time, and you have to be prepared to make some improvements to your wooden bridges, which I think could be coming in the next few years. The maintenance facility is basically in good condition. It's well kept, but it's small. It kind of gets crowded in there with all the equipment and so forth. So something to keep in mind. Probably not on an urgent list for a replacement or full complete review, but it's certainly something that you want to keep your eye on, and you would benefit from improvements and expansion to this. I think the parking lot area is certainly one of the weaknesses here. It's not a paved parking lot. It's not striped. There's no lights. I think it's certainly something that you might want to consider investment in. It's kind of I think the phrase that I used is it's the initial impression that people get when they come to your property. It's an entrance presentation that's not ideal. And especially if you're going to add a new clubhouse, you certainly want to make sure that your entire entrance presentation, everything matches. Good quality golf course, good quality clubhouse, you should have a good quality parking lot along with it. In our original study, our architect had some ideas about a campus of buildings that you could consider. This, I understand, is in flux, and I don't think it was meant to be a recommendation, but I think it was an effort to show you that you have a lot of space to work with in and around the current modular temporary clubhouse, the back patio, and the 18th green, that you could do something really nice there. And if you wanted to, you could do it as modular space, or a campus of space. You could have a pro shop building with good quality restrooms and some basic relaxing areas, along with like an outdoor pavilion, covered outdoor space, a patio of some type that people could gather after golf, and then you could build a separate cart storage building. It might be a way that you could, help control the cost on something like this, because each of those components might have different costs per square foot, as opposed to just building it all in one building, in one clubhouse. I think that's yet to be determined as to what you could figure out. I think what we were trying to do is show you that there is room within this footprint that gives you some flexibility on how you can add these elements to this property, which are definitely needed. The clubhouse, the existing building has systems issues, quality service issues. The restrooms are not good. I don't know how much longer you can really function with that temporary clubhouse. You're getting by day to day, but it's not ideal, and it leaves a bad impression for your customers. Again, the word condemned, I'm not a building inspector, so I can't tell you that. But from what I'm hearing, I think it's something that you have to keep in the back of your mind, that it could happen any day. There's a lot of issues with the services, with the structure, with the foundation, with the HVAC doesn't really work anymore. The restrooms are small and kind of not in good condition. A new clubhouse gives you the opportunity to address all of this. You have to accept the fact that you're going to have to address it at some point, no matter what. You cannot continue as is indefinitely with a temporary clubhouse that's 25 years old. It was only designed to be there for 3 or 4 years, and you've gotten a lot out of it. It's 20 years later. But at some point, you're going to have to address it, so you'll have to figure out what is the best way to address it. We think a new clubhouse gives you some real opportunity to raise the profile and change the profile of this whole property, because the clubhouse building itself provides new direct revenue from all sorts of sales of things, in terms of merchandise, in terms of food and beverage, and all of that, and especially drinks that have a high margin. But there's also indirect revenue. Golf facilities that have good quality clubhouses play more rounds, and they can charge more rate for the experience. So there's both direct revenue and indirect revenue, and we tried to reflect that in some of the projections that we made, but I think it's important to bring up that I think a new clubhouse changes the whole profile, the whole business profile of Acushnet River Valley, and I think that that's really important. And when you throw in the fact that what you have now is really unacceptable, I think it becomes the obvious way to move forward. This was our estimate last year of some of the improvements that we had recommended, and our best estimate of costs. Ultimately, you'll have to have these things costed out through bids as you ultimately make the move to address some of these issues. The cart paths I mentioned, some bunker work, the tee improvements, the pond repairs and all of that, some fairways recontouring, the tree trimming, some maintenance building improvements, things like that. $2.5 million. This was done a year and a half ago. We all know the dreaded inflation word is out there. This was our best guess for that. It's expensive to fix golf courses, but I think that these are some of the things that really could enhance the property. The whole lower priority, the clubhouse idea, and a new irrigation system long term, it's certainly a $3 million item to redo the clubhouse. We had recommended it. This is why we recommended it, or let me take that back. This is why we had projected it for you as a campus of building, because the different buildings have different costs. If you do a separate cart barn, you may find it's less expensive to do it that way than put it in your clubhouse underneath. Because if it's in the clubhouse underneath, then it becomes part of the clubhouse, and you have to look at the total square footage of a full new building as opposed to a separate cart storage building. I'm seeing that growing in popularity around the country with public golf courses, to have a separate cart storage building, because it's a lot cheaper to put it together. And you also may be able to do it with charging facilities, so you could have electric carts out there. I think would be great. That golfers tend to prefer that from the noisier, gas carts. And then do a tournament pavilion or a patio separately. Also help save on some of the costs. I think if you put all three of these elements together in one big clubhouse building, I would expect that it would be more expensive than what we have shown here. And again, this was a year and a half old. There may be some adjustments that need to be made with this, but this was our best guess. The irrigation system at Acushnet River Valley, typically we say irrigation system is a 30 to 35 year lifespan. Your golf course is 25 years old. In meeting with the superintendent out there, I'm not hearing stories of urgent repairs that are needed on the irrigation system. We wanted to present that to you as something to put in the back of your mind to think about, that whatever investments you make today and in the coming years at Acushnet River Valley, you need to keep in mind that the irrigation system is looming, and that's the lifeblood of the whole facility. So, maybe in the 2030s, you might have to deal with that. So in the 2020s, clubhouse, fix up some of the golf course items, cart paths, things like that. But keep in mind, next decade, you're probably going to be looking at a new irrigation system too. Operationally, it's a town golf course. And I think everything that I see and everything that I have reviewed as part of this project would strongly suggest to me that it is run as a town golf course. Strong public purpose in its operation, the juniors, the high schools, the charity tournaments. It enhances the overall offering of Acushnet as a town. The fact that you have it here, it's even in your pictures, I think, of your town history. There's a picture of the golf course. So it's an important part of your community. It's self-operated by the town. That is still the most popular form of operation for public golf courses like this around the country. There is a growing move toward privatization, but I think a lot of towns and cities and counties have resisted that because they like to keep it close. And the fact that that you as selectmen, and you have your staff and your golf committee, and it's all tight, and you can control it. If you privatize it, you have a tendency to lose some of that control. And I think it's really important for a lot of towns to try to retain that public purpose of this facility and keep it close to your town. In our report, we compared your staff size to U.S. standards that I'm keeping as part of a regular function of what I do. Your staff is small. It's smaller than what we typically see at public golf courses. I think you only have 6 full-time employees. The standard is 10, 12, 15. So, it's definitely a small operation, but you've got a lot of really good quality people there that are making it work. and they know the property really well. They've been there, they're veterans, they've been there a long time, so they know where all the bodies are buried and they know how to make it work. So I think that works. You get good technology, and I mean the fees, I think at the time we did this, we looked at the fees being appropriate. I think that I haven't really updated, the competitive situation in the last year and a half. It sounds like that some of the other competitors have really pushed up their fees a lot higher in the last year because of all the demand, the pent-up demand that we're seeing in golf. It may be appropriate for Acushnet to take another look at that as well. We'd have to look at that separately and see kind of where you are. But it's a moving target, and you have to be ready to adjust. And keeping it all close together with a town operation like you do, I think it's something that you can keep in mind and look at. Your food and beverage service is below expectations, but your staff is making do. They're doing the best that they can with what they have, but it's certainly not at the level that would match the quality of the golf course. So this was what we were shown and provided by the town for your summary of performance. Somewhat outdated already, because I understand that in FY24 you had a much better year than you did in 23, and you're halfway through FY25 and it's already ahead of pace of 24. So these numbers and the revenue in particular, tipping over that big $2 million mark in total facility revenue, you're definitely blew past it in 2024 and you'll exceed it again in 2025. I think it's very powerful. I mean, the standard public golf course in this country does about 1.4 million in revenue, and that includes a full clubhouse. So, I mean, you have a temporary clubhouse and you're doing 2 million. I mean, I think that there's really potential here for this to be a very strong performing facility in terms of revenue. The only red on this entire screen is when you were closed for 10 weeks because of COVID in 2020. Golf has definitely strengthened in the last 4 years. We did our big report in 2024. This was done since, and I'll leave this as a leave behind for you. Since I did the Acushnet report, the NGF undertook a big review of golf in 2024. And golf is in a boom period right now. And all the data that we've shown is supporting it. I mean, the rounds are up. The rounds were up in Massachusetts. The basic profile of Acushnet matches the demographics. The entire south coastal region of Massachusetts matches demographics for high participation in golf. You've got an influx of golfers coming into the area. There's competition with other facilities, and the fact that you don't have the ancillary amenities that some golfers like might be a disadvantage, but the golf course is high quality. But the facilities that are charging the higher rate in the market are the ones, Crosswinds, Old Scotland, Allendale, the ones that have better ancillary amenities, better clubhouses, food and beverage operations, better than what you have, and it enables them to kind of push their fees up a little bit higher. But golf is certainly in a boom period, and you've experienced it at Acushnet River Valley. All these courses have experienced it, and as a result, they've been pushing their fees up. And you've increased your fees a little bit, but there may be room to go a little higher, and I think it's worth reviewing a little more closely. So to wrap up, we had produced some recommendations in our report for you. I think that we stand by them, and even a year and a half later, I think it still makes sense. The self-operation structure is the best for you. I mean, I don't know what else you could go to that's going to put you in a better place in terms of privatization. I think that you're in the right place with that. You maybe would benefit from some staff enhancement. We talked about modest increase in fees, getting up to $79. I think you could probably push that higher, but I don't want to say that without a more thorough study, up to date. But when we looked at this a year and a half ago, we definitely thought you could get to like $80, for your highest fee for non-residents. You certainly want to address these repairs and improvements, the cart paths, the bunkers, the embankments, things like that, and begin planning for your clubhouse, which apparently it seems like you have. I understand there is an RFP out for some design services, and also the irrigation replacement that I mentioned earlier. Begin planning for that. We did a economic projection as part of our report. We thought that the new clubhouse could add as much as $600,000 in new revenue to this property. So, more like 2.6 million for this property. Both direct and indirect. You'd have some additional sales in the clubhouse itself, and the new clubhouse will also help you sell more golf, and at a higher rate, which I think leads to better revenue. However, we also wanted to make sure you understood that a new clubhouse is also going to add to your expense total. I mean, if you're going to offer these services in a new clubhouse, you have to be prepared that the expenses on a day-to-day basis are going to go up too. You'll need more staff, and there'll be maintenance costs for these facilities, etc. But I mean, it should cover it all. I mean, you're making $300,000 in 2023. You did better in 24 and 25 with the new clubhouse. I don't think it's unreasonable for this to look at this and say this is $500,000 a year net revenue after all expenses is a reasonable target for everything. Obviously, things you can't control. That's the one thing about golf. There's always risk. We've seen the inflation. We've seen the recession. Limited time for recreation. There's so many different things. But, and the fact that the $340,000 that you pay every year now for the original construction debt service is getting ready to be finished in the next couple of years, that certainly frees up a large expense item that would make this look even better in terms of the financials. So it's an opportunity to push the reset button on the whole property, to modernize Acushnet River Valley, to finish it. Because I think when it was first constructed and a temporary clubhouse was put in there, the idea was that at some point you earn a new clubhouse. And I think as you look at 2024 and 2025, I think we could say you probably have done that. You probably have earned that point where you can make that investment and complete this property properly and finish it with a new clubhouse and address some of the other things. Push up the staff a little bit. Modest changes in fees, continue with a lot of the programming that you've done. But this is a really good quality public golf course. I see a lot of these. I mean, that's my life and that's my world. And a lot of communities really struggle with their municipal golf course, but they struggle because the quality of the golf course product isn't good. And I've seen a lot of communities, invest a lot of money in clubhouses and ignore the golf course. I think you're in a really unique position in that you could have both. You've got a really good golf course that's in place already, and now it's time to maybe augment it with the proper, clubhouse facility. And I think that really gives you the opportunity to really set this up, to complete the property and set yourself up for the next 25 years. And that's basically a quick summary. I guess I went a little bit longer than I thought I would, but that's kind of what we see with your property. And I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. Gentlemen, any questions?
You just spoke pretty much everything that I've had in my mind for quite some time, right? I've talked about a golf clubhouse in the town for over a dozen years now, and I get it. We're trying to wait until the debt comes off, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a certain point when you have to look at what you have and say we need to make a decision, right? We're finally in that mode where a couple of years out, as you've talked about with the debt, right? And there's that fine balance of adding more staff and figuring out where your net profit's going to be, right? And I agree with everything that you said. Is if we improve that clubhouse, it increases revenues in so many different ways, right? And you just figure out those calculations, and you can figure out what staff is, and you can still be walking away with a substantial net profit from the clubhouse, right? I said it 12, 13 years ago about food and beverage. Get each round of golf to $10, you generate an additional $200,000, and that's when we were doing 29, 30,000 rounds of golf, right? So the clubhouse essentially can pay for itself in a short period of time just from the net profit that you're going to generate by doing it, right? And then after the debt's paid off for the clubhouse, you could take all that additional revenue and sink it into other parts of the facility like you had discussed. I mean, we could do parking lots, no problem. We could do car paths, no problem. But we talked about a maintenance building, right? So that would be the add-on to it. And you could do a maintenance building down the road pretty much for free just from the net profits from the improvements that you make in your first 3 to 5 years. If you could pay that off, in 3 to 5 years, you could be putting up a new maintenance building and not have any debt on it, right? And you could be debt-free on everything at that point. So it's simple mathematics to me. I think that this board is engaged with the golf committee. While I have the golf committee here, the golf management committee here, and some of my staff here, I give the golf committee the utmost respect, and kudos to all of them folks that have been on the golf committee. Some of our folks have been here since day one, right? And I give them the biggest kudos. The folks are in the room right now, so congratulations, gentlemen, for the hard work that you've done for that golf club. And that's where the credit belongs, is with that golf management and our staff, right? So we're working together to try to figure this thing out and try to figure out what fits in the town of Acushnet without spending too much money on a new clubhouse, so that we can continue to be what we are today, right? Just new and improved.
Yeah, modernized. Step into the 21st century. Yeah, I mean, you're in a really good position. I mean, as I said, I spend my life looking at municipal golf courses. That's my whole world now. And this is really one of the better ones. I mean, in terms of, in a lot of ways, in terms of the financials, in terms of the quality of the product. But, the ancillary amenities are lagging behind, and even the maintenance facilities. I mean, I've seen so much worse, I mean, with everything. But I think you've got your priorities straight, because I think the number one miss that I see in municipal golf is they don't take care of the golf course itself. There is no pathway to success by cutting expenses in a public golf operation. It's a guaranteed failure. And the fact that you have kept the golf course in such good condition is such a huge plus. And there's no reason why I would think this could ever really just drop off a cliff. As long as you maintain it like that, there'll always be people that'll want to come and play it.
Kudos to Mr. Tibbles, right, and his staff.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Tibbles standing right behind you. And I've said it a number of times to Mr. Tibbles. Kudos to him and his staff. For keeping the golf course the way it is. I'm not a golfer, but going back to the clubhouse, I've had this conversation with a number of people. You build a new clubhouse, you add some amenities, food and beverage and things of the like, you're gonna get people like me to go down there and maybe hang out, have a drink, have a burger, do whatever, wait for my buddies to come off the course, have a drink with them. There's more revenue that's not just coming from golfers, right? So it's an
Absolutely.
expanded facility. That's how you're gonna bring in additional revenue. It's not just coming from golfers, right? I know a number of people that I've spoken to in this community and elsewhere that said, if you had that amenity, we would love to go down and hang out and have a drink down there, right? On a beautiful Sunday afternoon, whatever it may be.
Absolutely, overlooking the 18th green or whatever. I mean, there's so many. But then I would also throw a word of caution into that too, and be careful not to overbuild on that. Because the number one thing that I see also with municipal golf courses is when they get too aggressive with the clubhouse and they make it too big.
We've talked about it. You try to keep it, bigger than what we have, but not a monster, right? Because it's all about the money, right?
Right. It's just like the church philosophy, right? I mean,
wouldn't
you build for everyday use and you try to make do on your busiest day.
It wouldn't fit into the community if we built a monster, would it?
Yeah,
So,
it wouldn't fit the property either.
We
so.
want it to fit into the community, and I think the golf management committee, they've got their hands around this and their heads wrapped around this thing with the staff and this board of selectmen. I don't see that as a problem moving forward. I really don't.
Jim?
Yeah.
Did you look at the overall physical footprint? Is there underutilized space, as we come in through the entrance? Where I'm going is in the off season, places have simulators and they capture that winter golfer who wants to stay active. I know the Bedford Country Club has an indoor simulator. Some of the nicer courses do, or they have heated bays for driving at the driving range. Did you look at that at all?
We did. I mean, I think that basically there's some room, but not a lot. And I'm assuming that you mean from the maintenance building in toward the clubhouse.
Just the overall physical.
If you get past the maintenance building as you're getting out toward the roadway, I'm not as familiar with that part of the property. But from the maintenance facility inward, I think there is, with some reconfiguration, I think you do have a little bit of room to make some expansion. You can expand your practice facility. If you wanted to really go big, you could add some covering to the range area and make it an all-season, a year-round type of driving range facility. That maybe you can add some technology to that, which is big and popular around the country now. Tracking devices and things like that let people come out and hit balls in the wintertime and improve their game, things like that. But there's some expense to that. But in direct answer to your question, yes, I think there is room to do all of that.
Have you
do it
seen
right.
similar facilities? I'm not saying that we would want to be on the hook for constructing something, but where there's some overnight opportunity, right? Like whether it be a boutique hotel. When I say hotel, not in a grand state, but an opportunity for somebody who's out of town, some whether it's a 10-room facility
Stay and
or something
play.
along those lines. Yeah, stay and play. Again, I'm not saying that we want to get in that business, but if it's an RFP, some private entity, I'm just trying to think of what would make it a real experience there.
Yeah. I haven't seen too much of that in the public sector.
And if that's the answer, then that's the answer. There's a reason why you haven't seen too much.
Right. Well, there were some. I mean, you know, one of my clients is local to me, is the city of Hollywood, Florida. They have 2 municipal golf courses, one a 36-holer that is under renovation, and the second one is what they call the Hollywood Beach Golf Course, which had a 16-room hotel that was built in the 1950s, and it had a heyday, but it fell out of favor because it got stale, and they just within the last 3 or 4 years knocked it down. So,
That's my answer.
yeah. So you have to, it's something you have to keep up with.
Create space. Create space.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, all set with the questions?
Do you have anything?
Sure. Golf committee, any questions for Mr. Singh? I'm sure you have all spoken to him fairly regularly.
No. I mean, I guess you guys are gonna take this plan, prioritize, I think the clubhouse is a separate entity, right? We're looking at that. But these capital improvements, you're gonna come up with a roadmap as to what you wanna invest in over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? And start building that plan out. Is that where you wanna go with this?
Yeah. Yes, I would think exactly, Mr. Wona, that, you know, aside from clubhouse, whatever we want to call it, you know, with the sizable retained earnings we've been able to amass, especially over the past few recent years, let's address the lower hanging fruit, to use that term, in the course that we need, some bunkers, cart paths, you know, those lesser things that still cost money above and beyond the everyday operating expense, but now we have the opportunity to fund some of those things. And you have a prioritized list from Dana and Steve and say, okay, what can we start to knock off right away and keep making these investments? While concurrently looking at what can we build, even if it's in phases or multiple things, along with, you know, we had the architect presentations a couple of weeks ago for firms that are potentially interested in helping us along that line. You know, concurrently with that, how can we have a longer term plan and a short term plan and lay out a financial plan to address all of these things and making sure that everything stays sustainable as we continue to grow into this move towards the bond being paid off, and how we're going to then reinvest in the course. So
I mean, I've always felt like, and I know this is counterintuitive for people to hear this, but while we still had the mortgage, breaking even was still a good year, right? Like, you know,
Right.
never being in debt was always the goal, and it was hard for people to get their head around, like, what, we're in this business to not make a profit, but, you know, but it's reinvesting in the value of open space and having a source of pride for the community, and people to understand Acushnet is value in itself, and, you know, so long as we're not losing money, that's a good year.
exactly, if we can reinvest and still make some money and just keep the course, so it's, as Richard said, the number one thing that brings people back is the quality of the course. So the last thing we ever want to see is the quality of the course suffer at the expense of something else. So that has to remain the priority. Investment in what we need, again, with cart paths, bunkers, retaining walls, whatever. Got to keep that going, keep the quality up there, and then just build around it.
I want all of the above, plus a $300,000 to $500,000 profit every year, so we can give back to the community.
Well, we can get that.
We can, I know we can.
But you maybe, you don't want to plan for that. You know, part of having a reserve like you do is kind of like that rainy day thing. Because, you know, looking at the numbers here, you saw that it was red there, you know, in that COVID year, right? Some of the communities that I work with, they had to shut their golf courses down and they never reopened them because of that. I mean, you were in a position, because you had retained earnings, to save the property. And something like that could happen again, and you have to be prepared for it. And, you know, and not cut everything, you know, we'll say, well, hey, you know, we had a bad year, we have to lay off 3 of our maintenance workers. I think that's a huge mistake, because then the quality of the product goes down, and then you get in that spiral and you're in real trouble. So you always have to make sure you protect the property, and having extra retained earnings like you do is a big plus for you to kind of, it's save for a rainy day concept, which I think is a really important thing.
Absolutely.
We've always made the Golf Management Committee on their behalf again, yes, I'm gonna speak on their behalf again, and also this Board of Selectmen have always made it a commitment to our taxpayers for that golf course to never cost them a dime. And we've done that along with that Golf Management Committee and staff, right? That's the goal, and now the new goal moving forward, modernizing, is to work on a profit that's sustainable, so we can continue to make improvements without always carrying debt.
And there may be a year or two here or there, especially in the early years when you've added a new clubhouse, where it may have to dip below and be in the red for a year or two, but that you're building for something better for the long term.
As long as we have a piggy bank, right?
Yeah, exactly, and you have the piggy bank to cover that, so that's the big plus. It's a great place to be, no question about it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Singer. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Glad to have finally made it up.
Yeah. Your priorities were important last time, though. I understood.
Well, I had to tell Dave, when he was like, we're getting ready for this, there's another storm brewing in the Gulf, and it's like, you gotta be kidding me. But fortunately, it fizzled out.
All right. You're not stuck here for another week?
I wouldn't mind if the weather stays like this.
Right.
You on the East Coast or the West Coast?
East Coast.
All right. Golf staff replacement, Louis DeMello. Looks like Mr. Schuster is relocating, is that correct, Dana?
Yes, sir.
All right, and I went through the resume, it looks pretty good. This is an avid player that just decides he wants to play so much he wants to work there too?
Yes, sir.
Motion to appoint Louis DeMello as a starter.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, I would now ask the golf committee to adjourn their meeting, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Jen here? Hi, no way. All right, Jen, you're up. Unipay, review of matters presented, votes may be taken.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Warner?
As you know, this Unipay slash, this invoice cloud, but this notion of getting online, the ability to pay online, is residents, to get as many residents as possible to do that. It's been sort of like a passion project of mine. And in talking with Jen, it's clear that we're leaving a lot of functionality on the table. There's departments that handle money, that are still handling cash and check, that if we can migrate towards, online payments, I think that'll make folks' life easier. But I also realize, sort of working in that tech space, when you're going through change management and going to some type of, trying to get people to do things differently, it does take time. So I don't want to overburden the staff. Jen, we've talked about a phased-in approach. Obviously the town clerk's office, we've talked a great deal there. There's opportunity with dog licenses and other things, but that seems like a really big beast to take on right now. And
Sure.
Not sure that we'd want to put that on Pam, but there are other departments, we've talked about it, the DPW, with people who want to pay for their mattresses and do all that stuff. I guess here at Town Hall for our liquor licenses, we
Correct.
now have that ability to do.
You have 10 transactions
We
on the
just gotta,
select board's
we
side.
just gotta let people know about it, right? So, I think we wanna hype that up. So I don't wanna steal your thunder, but I just wanted to frame the discussion, and then offer, there's gonna be some outreach to the staff, and I'd be more than happy to help Jen with that if the board was okay with it. So I'll turn it over to Jen now, but I just wanted to at least frame the issue.
So, like I said, I work with Invoice Cloud, and now that I'm familiar with Unipay, I enjoy Unipay, and Invoice Cloud is great also, but where this is already in place in the town, and it's pretty much a free service. So, since last year, from 2023 to 2024, there is a huge increase in payments online, just in the treasurer collector's office. That, it's roughly about, I'm gonna give you the paperwork to compare both years. It was 1.2 million in 2023 and 2 million in 2024. So we do have a lot of residents paying on bills online. I believe the town clerk's office is on board going into Unipay. She thinks it's a great idea. They are changing vendors. So once this whole election and everything is done, we will be talking. She's already met with our sales rep to onboard that department. DPW is on board with online transactions as of now, and I'm still researching with golf.
Is
And
there
as-
any communication issues, like, just to jump back to the DPW, I think I had mentioned it to you last time when we were talking about it. Ultimately, the DPW just wants to make sure that the records end up in the DPW's hands, so they can make sure what's going on. I know there's like a communication thing. Is there a way to send notification to the
They would have
DPW?
access to the online service,
Okay,
and they would download reports weekly
Perfect.
and submit it to our office. So they would know day-to-day transactions.
perfect.
What is this?
It's Unipay.
I know what
Online
Unipay,
service.
I'm just confused at what the topic of the matter is. I mean, what are we
Getting
what are we
other
doing?
departments online.
Essentially,
Unipay
Unipay has
services
all these
online.
extra
For
plugins.
like
so to
using
speak.
credit cards?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and to Mr. Gasper, as you know, sometimes with change that takes place, we wanted to make sure something like this, where it's impacting department heads and has, you know, will be public facing eventually, I wanted to make sure that the board had some sight into this before Jen just started going off on her own, right? So I want
So-
to make sure there was support and buy-in with the board to start moving forward with other departments.
It's just having a credit card processing machine within those departments?
So they have a credit card machine that they could use. Some departments do not want that. But if you wanted to pay for a mattress online,
No, I got that. We have that. That's
Yeah.
like a no-brainer,
Right.
right? Somebody can go in and pay
yeah.
for
So
a
as long as
mattress,
there's
but
50 transactions a month, there is no service fee. So it's and then I can combine departments. So if building is on it right now. So you can pay your building permit online.
yeah.
So as long as both departments can be in the same account, and it would be a free service as long as it hits 50 transactions a month,
Right.
which we do.
I think what the chairman was speaking of when it came to DPW is just because that revenue is gonna be kept out separate.
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Yeah, it would hit their account.
For like recycling and all that stuff, because I'm pretty sure that we have a revolving account for DPW recycling, don't we? I think we created one for
It
DPW.
would hit their charge account, but they,
So when we do like the things like the mattresses and all that stuff, that money should be funneling off to that account, right?
Correct.
To make sure that that money's not just going back into the general fund,
Correct.
right? I think that's what, Mr. Chairman, you
Yeah.
might be
Yes.
alluding to.
Well, that and
And
actually,
obviously, bill pays for like water and sewer bills can't just go, because that's an enterprise, right?
correct, yes. So they would submit a turnover to our department weekly, and we would hit.
But that's all paid in the collector's office already, isn't it, Jen?
Right, it is, but now if people can, on a Saturday, want to pay for a mattress, again, online.
Oh, yeah,
print out
but that's
a receipt
just
and
the
bring it
town
to them.
bond, yeah,
Yeah.
I get, so we're not really doing anything out of the box that we're
No,
always
it's just
doing, it's just
making
more of a communication
Correct.
thing.
Kevin, it's just making sure that the departments
I just don't
know
know.
what the plan is, that this is something that the board
Yeah,
wants
yeah,
to see
no, I-
happen, because you know how it goes, right? You introduce a new topic or a new job description, if we haven't properly communicated, we don't want to create any friction whatsoever. We want to make this as seamless as possible.
Mhm.
We don't want our employees to wake up one day and say, what, I have to now do something online?
Good, yeah,
So we
I
just,
get-
I want to make sure that the board's supportive,
Mhm.
and then the plan would be for Jen, I'll be present to assemble a meeting with the department heads and whoever staff.
And the sales rep would love
And
to
the
come
sales
speak
rep,
too.
to make
He's
sure
awesome.
people know what the plan is, and we'll go about this slowly to make sure everybody feels comfortable with it and it works well. That's the purpose of this, is to make sure, we don't want you finding out about it, you know,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
from a third
Uh-huh.
source, vice versa.
Oh, I know how that goes. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay,
cool.
Good.
Thanks, Jen.
all right, thank you.
And Dave, that's fine if you want to jump in on that.
Really appreciate it. Not to micromanage, but just to provide.
No, absolutely. And I know, going back years now, you brought up the invoice cloud, and I think realizing that Unipay, which we had, it was just a matter of turning the switches on,
Right.
works out pretty well. Alright. Number 4, Assessment Center, RFP. Mr. Kelly, you just,
I
Need
need to
authorization.
have 4 and 5 considered jointly.
okay. So let's jump to,
Because second in command is gonna be $50,000 above first in command, because they're eligible to work overtime. That's basically what this comes down to.
That's number 1, and number 2, you'd have a union member where you're relying on that union member to be involved in discipline and to be involved in the post-reporting.
Mr. Warner?
Yeah, so, while I appreciate town council's recommendation or opinion, I mean, it's negotiable though, right? I mean, if we were to, you're telling, so if we went
No.
to a second in command and we developed an MOU with the union to take the second in command out of the union, because we understand what the board is intended, that's not up for a discussion or negotiation?
The MOU could at some point in the future, at a different time, the union could petition the DLR in spite of the MOU, because right now you have a recognition clause in the contract that says that the members of the unit are only below lieutenant.
Sergeant and below.
Yeah, and so it's specific in the words in the contract, but according to council, the union can still petition the DLR and accrete the position into the union.
Well, I think for me, I mean, I feel very strongly about creating a second in command, and, you know, with all due respect to the full board, I wasn't in support of the lieutenant. I feel the deputy chief is something that fulfills the intent of the second in command. That said, I'd like a memo from town council on exactly what the state of play is. Are there options to have this second in command, whatever we decide to name it, out of the union if the police department also agrees to it? And how can we make sure that this fulfills the intent of the board? Because I would hate to see something that's sorely needed not go forward based on a technicality of the union. I think both parties believe there should be a second in command.
Yep.
So I would hate to see something like that get in the way. So I think I'm gonna need a little bit more from town council.
Do you want a memo, or do you want him
I want
to zoom in at some point?
a memo, and, because I think both cases to explain the memo.
And just to jump back onto that point, whether it's lieutenant, captain, or deputy chief, it's already been suggested that the union would pull it no matter where it is in the totem.
That they would.
No matter what, they're gonna go for the position, most likely, whether it's deputy chief, captain, or
Whatever, the
lieutenant.
name is whatever. right?
Yeah, correct, so whatever second in command position we choose, regardless of what the rank is, the union is going to most likely try to adopt it into the union.
So I was told captain, lieutenant, 90-10 chance we lose, 50-50, 60-40, deputy chief. There's precedent set in the Commonwealth. Deputy chiefs are union, lieutenants and captains are in unions, right? And there is a separate union for those folks, but they're not gonna do it just with one person from a department. So they would be put in this current union. So if you wanna get a letter, look, we're behind the curve with the assessment center. I don't want to be waiting around any longer. I found out through civil service and the current chief that the way civil service works is, and I was under the impression when we were talking about, and I was advocating for second in command, is you would be all set in the future that you wouldn't need to go back out for an assessment center. That is not true after having dialogue with many police officers, including our current chief. That title holds only for 2 years, just like the regular assessment. So even if we had a second in command and that person happened to be number 3 on the list, that we made that person second in command, the number 2 person for the chief's assessment center would automatically become the next chief. And you only have, it's a 2-year moratorium, just like sergeant's exams are when you go off of that. So that position's only good for 2 years. After that, you have to redo an assessment center regardless of who's second in command. They don't automatically slide in.
Right.
That was kind of the hook that got me, and I was like, well, that's kind of screwing up the intent, but we could continue having dialogue. And then he told me about this, town council's opinion on the union thing, and they're gonna have overtime, and I was like, no, that can't happen. You just, and you can't just do, I don't know what the answer to that question would be that I think Mr. Wonar's asking, but a memorandum of understanding is only good for so many years, right? So to put that on the hook for future selectmen and or our taxpayers, to put them in that spot saying, oh, it's good, we'll agree to it for a 3-year MOA, that's garbage.
Well, I would like to, obviously, getting a permanent chief in is job number one. This other piece of it, if it requires additional work, but I need something from
So-
legal counsel
All
about
right,
beyond just.
while council prepares his memo,
Mr.
can I go forward with the RFP for the assessment for just the chief?
Just a minute, Mr. Gassman.
So if you did that, then we don't know if we could get that in the assessment center if we were gonna go for a second in command. That's the reason why it was the cost effect, right? So we're in a bad spot, in my opinion, with the chief's assessment center because of the holidays now, right? So I don't believe that anybody, by the time we get that delegation approved from HRD and we agree to that delegation agreement, right? I don't believe we're doing an assessment center between Thanksgiving and Christmas, okay? So we got a dead period of 6 weeks. That's what I'm gonna call that. So we have a little bit of time to get to town council, have some discussion with town council, things of the like. What I would like to see is get that delegation in, get that thing going for the actual chief's assessment center, riding along the coattails of the second in command thing to get some more answers from council and things of the like, maybe a meeting with us in that time frame, and be ready to hit the ground running with an assessment center come January, immediately. No
So-
more waiting, no more, when we were talking, we're waiting for HRD to get us some for September 1st, they dragged their feet, they didn't get it to us until mid-September, or third week of September, or whatever, and we're sitting here at the end of November going, still talking about an assessment center.
So the RFP should, I've got a, as you know, I've got a large draft I've got to pare down, but I can have that to the next meeting and then we can put it out.
We gotta get it out,
Yeah.
right? But I think we need to shake down the answers for the second in command with council. So whether that takes a Zoom meeting next week, whatever we can do, if whatever the availability is, it's up to the chairman, right? To talk to council about this thing, to get a direct answer instead of waiting 2 weeks, 3 weeks for us to do this. Let's get the ball rolling. I'm tired of the ball just sitting down on the court stagnant, right? We gotta get this thing rolling, and I can tell you right now, I don't think it would be fair to anyone, right? As far as our police officers, sergeants go, to put them in that situation between the holidays. It's a very hectic period of time for a lot of people with families, so we gotta get the RFP out, let the people start getting bids in, or whatever it's gonna be to get that ball rolling. Come January, we gotta hit the ground running.
Sound good. Jamie, I'll sit down with you tomorrow afternoon, and we'll see if we can put together a couple of dates for next week to do just maybe a 30-minute Zoom meeting with council and the board. This way we're not waiting until December to do it.
Like, if you can get us a memo ahead of time and then do it by Zoom just so we can ask questions.
Yep.
I mean, assuming Darren should be able to pull that up pretty quickly because
We've
he looked it up to talk to you about it, right? So he must have something he can cite.
All right. Oh, good. Oh, there he is.
He's here.
Hiding behind the
Come on up, Tom. So, gentlemen, I had spoken with Chief Wyland, and he didn't want to make a decision when we talked to him because he was working on a couple plans with a couple different mutual aid communities that he's been working with. But officially, I'm going to ask Tom to fill us in on what's happening with Rescue 2.
Okay, so Rescue 2 is the 2017 Ford F-550 ambulance that was purchased in 2016, 2017. When I first took over as chief in July of 22, it was still out finishing up its first engine replacement. It came back to us in August and it's been in service ever since. It turns out the motor that was put in it lasted 2 years and 5 months and failed again. The motor that was used as a replacement was a Jasper motor. It's now throwing cam bearings again. I have pictures of them that they pulled out of the oil pan. So it needs another engine replacement. And I didn't want to solely make a decision on whether or not to move forward with it. The repair shop where it's at now is the original company that did the engine replacement 2.5 years ago. The warranty that we were given on that from him and from Jasper was 2 years, and we're at 2 years and 5 months, and we're getting zero help at all with any of the cost on a short-lived motor. His estimate to replace it and all of the labor costs and everything runs us about $28,000 to $30,000. I spoke with one of our other maintenance shops, the one that just repaired Rescue 1, and he can do the same job for about $19,000, so a better option. The reason why I'm hesitant on pulling the trigger with any of that before speaking to you gentlemen is we now have 2 ambulances on order. Both are expected to be in sometime in the time frame of December of 25, January of 26. And my big question was, we spend the 20 to 30 grand to replace the motor. Are we going to get enough of a return on investment in that 1 year to 14 month time frame to make it worth us spending $20,000 to $30,000 to replace the engine again? The new engine would not be a Jasper, it'd be a Ford from factory out of the crate. So there's no issues there, which is what we did with Rescue 1 last year when we replaced it. So we're not going to run into that because I did not go with the Jasper. So basically we're currently borrowing Rochester's spare ambulance. They have 3. One is just used as a spare, which is how we are approaching the future. With the 2 ambulances we have on order, we're only trading in one of our old ambulances. So we'll have 3, one as a spare, so that if this happens ever again, we don't have to borrow. We're currently using Rochester's spare ambulance. Fairhaven has an ambulance that we've used in the past. New Bedford always has spare ambulances. I can try to piece it together so we don't have less than 2 ambulances at any given point, but I don't know what the board's pleasure is on whether or not we should just repair what we have, hope that we can get enough turn out of it to recoup what we're spending in the next 14 months to get our return on our investment at least break even.
Sure. Mr. Gassman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How fast can this engine be put in from Ford? Well, from your vendor that we're using in with a Ford engine?
The last engine he put in for us was 4 to 5 weeks, and then it took me 2 weeks to put the necessary 500 miles on it to do the break-in procedure. So probably 2 months.
You already talked to the place that we're using?
I've talked to both, yes. The expensive one and the other.
The engine's available
Correct.
from Ford
Correct.
Motor Company?
Correct.
What year is that ambulance, Rescue 2?
That one is a 2017.
So the Ford motor's pretty much junk too, right? Because that didn't last for crap either.
That's the one that had the issue first.
But it's only
The
been...
2017 motor was replaced before the 2016 motor. And the 2017 is now...
What's blowing them, the turbos? That fuel additive?
So it's mostly from the turbo area. The cam bearings basically shredded and ended up in the upper oil pan.
Got it.
Which is similar to what happened 2.5 years ago, causing the original issue.
We're not buying Ford ones again, are we?
No, the 2 ambulances I have on order are both Ram 5500s.
Okay.
For that reason.
Hopefully we'll have better luck, right? So, unfortunately, looking at $20,000, it's our bread and butter though, right?
Correct.
And taking that risk using another town's ambulance for a solid year kind of worries me.
Mm-hmm.
That's Mickey Mouse.
Right? And if something happens to that ambulance while it's in use by us, then we're probably on the hook for that
Correct.
puppy as well, right?
It might be more than 20.
I'd spend the
Awesome.
$20,000 to repair our ambulance, that's my opinion.
Okay.
Tom, is there any like public-private partnership at all? Like, is it like STAT or anything that, for that?
I haven't reached out to them. I've used our typical mutual aid partners. I can make some phone calls in the next couple
I'm
of days.
just wondering if, like, just for additional coverage, right? Like, we obviously have our own public,
Mhm.
I never want to privatize that.
Right.
But for additional coverage, it's with, a private
So,
entity. I don't know.
so as far as like adding extra backup for us, if we get multiple calls at once, it's extremely difficult for us to rely on any of the private ambulance companies, just because there's none based within a
Right.
close enough area to make it worth
yeah.
them coming in
Gotcha.
for us.
Okay.
That's our bread and butter, right?
Yeah, no.
So, I mean, the chief, we're covering roughly 60% of the budget, right, from EMS,
55-ish.
somewhere around that
Somewhere between
ballpark,
I hate to
right?
say it, but it's a moneymaker for us.
It is.
It sure is, right?
It
So
is.
to spend 20 for the amount that we make, and the general fund is basically reliant now upon that revenue of, in the amount of 550 grand a year, we need that ambulance to be running, right? So I'll make a motion to spend 20,000. You need 20 or 22 or?
He said 19 rough figures. He didn't have a whole lot of time to like get into the details of everything he would need, but he said 19. He did it for us last year for the other ambulance, and it was 17 and change.
So
it's-
say like up to
I'll make-
25, not to exceed 25, this way if something goes haywire.
Once I get a firm quote from him, I can come back in front of you guys with some kind of either transfer
Can you-
request or something.
Can you do that?
I can.
But you know what to do, right?
Yes.
The directive's there, I think,
Yep,
from the,
yep.
I'll make a motion for the chief to spend 20, 21,000, whatever, for a new engine for Rescue 2. And then you go off and do what you need to do, bring it back to us, and we can make a motion to approve that amount. Whether it's gonna be a reserve fund transfer or whatever we need to
Second.
do.
All those in favor?
All right.
And then whatever we spend on that, I can turn into a reserve fund transfer. And then because we have that cushion in the EMS reserve account, at the Springtown meeting, we can always go back and replace what I've used in the reserve fund with
If need-
EMS.
If need be,
if
right?
need be, depending on how.
Hopefully, nobody else can tap the
finances work out.
reserve fund.
Nope.
What's the warranty on the new Ford motor?
Don't have the exact details yet.
Can you get that too,
I
please?
will.
Can you find out if it's a redesign?
I will.
They've had a lot of problems.
Mm,
Not just, that motor's not just sitting in the ambulances, right? So I know a few
Correct.
people that have had that problem with their trucks.
Correct. When I went through this last year with the 2016 that we replaced, there was a lot of discussion between several different shops, repair shops, and myself with, and I believe even Mr. Hinckley, with why, if they knew this was such a problem and they just kept hiding it, why they didn't just put out a recall, because then they would be on the hook to repair it all. So,
Correct.
exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, chief. All right. General court petition to amend town charter section 3-1-2 to review matters presented. Votes may be taken. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kelly.
this is me being belt and suspenders.
Okay.
The vast majority of the home rule petitions that were waiting to be approved at the end of this legislative session didn't get through. And they're refiling all of them for the next session. Rather than have them come back and say, you've had a town meeting vote, we want to see a selectmen vote also after the town meeting, I'm asking that you put a motion together to send it up to the general court and for their review. It's as I said, belt and suspenders, but the fact that they didn't even bother to take up most of the home rule petitions at the end of the session, and now they're starting a new session, brand new 2-year session with new representatives. I've talked to our present representatives. All these petitions, as far as legislation goes, have to be, new petitions have to be filed by the first week in December. I want to get this in and get it going.
Motion to file the general court a petition for special legislation to amend the town charter and delete section 3-1-2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
If it needs belt and suspenders, we're gonna do it because, do we have to refile all the other ones?
You know, they're automatically
Okay.
doing that.
All right.
I know.
That's-
Some of them don't even have to be in formal session now, that's what gets me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Priorities. Right.
Election year.
They were all left in the,
But the election year, but some of them aren't even running for re-election. You think they just scoot them through, right?
they were all left in committee.
They might, who knows, crazy.
Who knows?
Better get their act together.
Yep. All right, next on the agenda, right of first refusal, 474 Middle Road. Review of matters presented, votes may be taken. Gentlemen, I put this up here. We've already seen this one before. It did fall through the last time when we voted to forego. I wanted to get this in before the end of November in front of you gentlemen, because the P&S does expire at the end of November. So I would ask if anybody has any input.
Motion to forego.
This is, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Gasper?
this is the 474 Middle Road that was 600, now it's 500, I think it is.
Correct.
So the problem with the town, with CPC, is we haven't acquired any large tract of land in a long time, right? And there's only so many funds available in CPC currently. I don't know exactly what that available balance would be. And we went to town meeting to dispose of small tracts of land. I think it was under 20,000 square feet. We haven't acted on that. And we also went to town meeting for approval to dispose of the old town library. So if we would have done something with either one of those, you'd have plenty of funding to make a purchase of this nature, right? It's a great piece of land for the town of Acushnet to acquire because it abuts two other conservation restriction properties owned by the town of Acushnet, right? Problem is, I don't know if the town has available funds of $500,000.
Unrestricted CPC funds are more than that. But you'd have to transfer it from unrestricted funds.
Yeah, no, I
CPC
understand.
meaning,
It's just, it's a nice tract of land. I know there's got substantial wetlands on it, but so does it the other conservation lands that abut this property. And it also goes to the river.
Gotta get some glasses.
Want one of these?
There's people here from the audience. I don't know.
We
We are here for
they're
this
the
topic, yeah.
possible owners.
We have the land in purchase and sale right now.
My next question to Mr. Kelly would be time.
That's my question.
So I don't know how it works. We have
Are you the owners or purchasers?
With a purchase.
purchases,
Got it.
potential purchase. The time frame for us to exercise, we're within that time frame, right? But is there anything in the statute that says we have to come up with the funds within a certain time frame? Because the only way we could really do this is town meeting, right?
Right.
And town meeting is at best 5 months away, 6 months away, right?
at best, unless you call a special town meeting.
I would never do that. I would never cost the taxpayers money to hold a special town meeting to purchase a piece of land, right? It's just, is that even, can that even happen is my point, right? Is, if you had monies available in a different account, as I just said, you dispose the old library, you'd have the money easily to do it, right?
They still have to go to town meeting on that.
Would we?
Unless you,
What he's saying is if we had the money in another account, we could just expend that money and then replenish it later and go to town meeting that way. But since we don't have the library on,
What I'm saying is we ask the people of the town to do certain things for us, because it's our request, it's our warrant, right? And we've asked to dispose of several properties that we know that we own, postage size lots, some are very tiny, right, and abutting other people's property. Why are they on the town's books, right? We did that, and we accomplished that goal. We also talk about disposing the library, right? I mean, that library's not gonna go for anything less than $500,000, and that's what we're talking about right now. So there's other ways that you could set up, I believe, you could set up an account that's for future purchases of open space and recreation. You can figure that out with council if there's a way to do that. I'm sure that there is, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to purchase future, land or whatever, but for right now, we're not at that point. So my question is if we were to go forward with the purchase of this property, do we even have that ability to do that because town meeting's so far away?
But the question is, are you able to sign a purchase and sale agreement without having appropriated funding out of the CPC?
It would be the question's, I think, is pretty simple. It's the same way it would normally be, right? Even if we were within that, 180 days to exercise, 120 days to exercise the right of first refusal?
I think it's 120.
So even if we were in that period and town meeting was 2 months from now, right? We could say we want to take the property, but we need to go to town meeting, right? But because that 120 days is way outside the scope now of town meeting for funding purposes, can we still do that without funding? We would normally do it without a funding, right, source, because we have to wait until town meeting to have a funding source. We're still doing the same thing, I just don't know if the statute runs out because of how long it is outside of the 120 days. So the question is, if we were to exercise our right of first refusal to purchase, can we wait 6 months to provide funding for the purchase? That's my question.
I don't know.
How many days do we have left until the 120 days are up?
120 days, I believe, is January 16th, maybe?
So if you want to hold to answer some questions, we could do that, certainly, Mr. Chairman.
And it's also a question of when you close on the property versus town meeting.
All right, so we can buy a little bit of time here and get some clarification before, if you want to do this, we can just pass over this until we can get some clarification.
Whatever the board wants to do.
I'll talk to Jonathan tomorrow.
Yeah, talk to Jonathan tomorrow and you can verify, because at least owe it to at least see what the dates are and what our actual capability is.
If it can't be done, it can't be done. I mean,
Yeah.
And
if the board comes back and says we don't have any interest in doing it, that's fine. I'm asking
And
questions.
setting an account up.
Yeah.
Oh, you could do that too, right? But
So,
if we get the ball rolling to try, I think we owe it to the taxpayers to dispose of that old library before there's no value to the old library, right?
It has, we have to get an appraisal, which I was planning to do with free cash now in the next town meeting.
All right, yeah, we can cross that.
Can I just ask the question though?
Sure.
With this lot here, I don't, yeah, it's 25 acres, it looks like a nice piece of property, but you've got a homeowner, you got somebody who owns the property.
the property is, I apologize.
Yeah, no,
May
please, I
speak?
want to learn more about it, like what's
So the house
intention?
is getting carved off. That does not go with the sale.
So Mrs. Morse's current house, they're just lotting that out right there on the corner.
60,000 square feet, which is the minimum, I believe, the minimum
Yep,
square footage for a buildable lot in the
yeah,
Acushnet
yeah,
will be carved out for the homeowner,
yeah,
and the remainder is what the sale is.
got it.
The total acreage is
Approximately
just over
six-
27 acres.
Approximately 6 acres of uplands is included in this. That's the sale. That's what you're buying.
So it's basically 6 out, right? Is the
Correct.
intention to put a home and that's it, or is it
Well, I had spoke with,
subdivide, or?
the intention is not to subdivide. I spoke with, I'm drawing a blank, the building inspector. And he said to come up with a plan, so I've been working with an engineer a little bit to come up with a plan for what I want to do, but this meeting really determines a lot because it's thousands of dollars to
Of
hire
course.
an engineer, and I don't want to do that
Right.
if we're not going to own the property.
Right, well, I guess if we're gonna make a purchase to this, right, it's all about mitigating some type of threat or something to the
Yeah.
town, right? Like, we don't wanna just acquire a piece of land.
Well, we had shown interest in this last time. We were just in the financial situation where we couldn't.
Right.
Because ultimately, the backside of this property connects Weldon Mills property and the golf course, and it also abuts the Acushnet River. There's Deep Brook, there's a bunch of,
Goes all the way to
all
Acushnet
the way,
Favorite Land
you
Trust.
could basically connect Middle Road to Main. And initially, when I had brought this up last time, and I really tried to actually find the funding for it, was ultimately, I thought it would be a good addition to the open space where you could actually open up nature trails in the back. So, I mean, ultimately, it was
Okay.
just for preservation in my aspect. But with that being said, I'm also in the same boat where I'm like, we don't have the funds now. What can we do?
He said CPC does now. Last year was different. Every year you get a new 150, 200,000 bucks, right?
We've kept putting a lot into unrestricted reserve at the CPC.
It's just, you know, we voted CPA in 2004 as a community. And back then it was open space and recreational, period, right? Now there's like 5 different categories people are spending money for, and, you know, whatever. I always make comments, well, you'll be using it for snow plowing pretty soon, right? And the town hasn't done a large purchase in a very long time. So what are we putting money into CPC for then, if we're not doing what the original intent of CPA was sold to the taxpayers in 2004? That's all. It's a decent piece of property because there's value there, I think, to the town. It's an asset to the town because it abuts all of our other conservation land, right? As Mr. Hinckley said, we didn't have the funding last year when it came up. I forgot who it was that was the original.
670,000 or something.
Mr. Olivera is who it was under, for 600 and change. So at a 20% discount, maybe it's worth a look at, that's
Well, it
all.
was also the full parcel, so it was a different purchase and sale. He was buying the house as well.
Yeah, there was all kinds of stipulations in his, I remember seeing it, they were leaving the house for so many years.
Well, she got a lifetime tenancy.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he still would own the whole
Yeah,
deal.
yeah, yeah.
So,
All right. So what I'm gonna suggest is, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
if you can get answers from Mr. Gasper at least tomorrow from Jonathan. Mr. Ciano, go ahead.
I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
I don't want to cut you off. I guess my first question is, you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys determine whether or not you want to purchase the land?
Correct.
Okay, so we at least need to make a vote to decide whether or not you want to purchase it.
We don't need to make a vote. We need to make a vote eventually. So tonight, we don't actually have to vote. I can continue this, I can bring it to next week, I can talk about it tomorrow, not tomorrow. 48 hours is essentially all I need. So out of respect for my colleague, I would like him to get the answers to his questions answered first. It doesn't mean that we're gonna push this off until after November. I can call for a meeting next week for 20 minutes and we can discuss it too, because I do know that time is of the essence for you.
Correct.
We're trying to actually do a Zoom meeting next week, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Correct.
So if we just add this to the agenda, I'm sure we can get an answer from Mr. Eichmann
Yep.
relatively quickly. And
So
then we
what-
could
what I-
accommodate, if we decide to go through with the forego of right of first refusal, then Mr. Ciano, and Mrs. Ciano will be all set to move forward.
So,
So we have an operating window, right? And there's nobody that can say anything. I think it's that 120 days for
Correct,
the
yeah.
right of first refusal, right? So if we didn't take it up to now, we could wait all the way till the 120th day and act on it at that point.
No, completely understood. I was just, my thought was, I know we have to determine whether or not, I believe the way you're putting it is, even if you said, yes, I want to buy it, if it has to wait till that town council meeting, can you in fact say you want to buy it? and wait
that's
until
why
then?
I want Mr. Kelly to get the answers from Mr. Gasper by tomorrow, the next day, the latest. And I know the PNS does expire in November 30th.
Correct.
And if we're gonna have a meeting next week, it'll be before that. And if we get the answer before then, I'll put it on the agenda regardless.
That would be great.
Did Concom or planning weigh in on this at all, or they?
Planning voted against it. There's not this time, but last time, the assessors voted against it. Concom didn't take an official vote because they didn't have a meeting between
When we
when
discussed
we
it last
discussed
time.
it last time. Well, in other words, they didn't have time to have it on their agenda before we put it on here. But I did speak with the Concom, and some members are for, some members are against.
Got it.
So it's a little up in the air. I kind of based everything off the last time,
Mhm.
when it pretty much reflects exactly what the letter said. Only one letter actually wanted to go forward with it last time. But I say
We'll have an answer to you within a week.
That would be great.
Because
We'll figure it
you
out.
said your P&S expires November 30th?
Yep.
And you would have to try to renegotiate it, obviously, right?
Correct.
But we're gonna
And
try,
it's-
we'll try to do our best to give it an answer
Yeah,
next
it's
week.
difficult to get a hold of the owner. She's in Florida now, and it's been a 3-year process now to get to this point.
Sure.
I have a lot of time invested in Mr. Oliveira. Took a lot of my time as well. So
Sure.
just trying to get to that point, that's all.
Yep.
I had an interest in this one because I grew up with the family. I went to school with the family, right? And I had an interest a long time ago on this property for a long time as well. But because of the way the wetlands are set up on that property, it was kind of like, you know, to the right person.
It's a tough piece. But
Yeah, to the right, for the right person, for the right use, it makes sense. To me, back then, it didn't make enough sense for me to do it, right? But I did have a lot of interest in it because of its proximity to all the other land, right?
Yeah.
Conservation land, right? So, we'll see what it's all about.
Very good.
I'll keep you posted. I'll talk to him tomorrow once we get some info and we know for sure what capabilities are. I'll reach out and tell you when the meeting is.
Excellent.
Sound
Thank you.
good?
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right. Last but not least, we have a Conservation Commission letter of resignation from the chairman, Ryan Resendes. Ryan did write us a nice letter. I'm not going to read it here, but I want to extend a lot of gratitude to Mr. Ryan Resendes for serving on this commission for quite some time as a member and the chairperson, and really understanding what it means to protect our community, but also give everybody a fair shot. And it's very commendable, and the reasons why he has to leave, he got a new job, and he's going up, and he wants to spend some time with his kids as well, and I do not fault him for that. So if there's a motion to accept his letter of resignation with the deepest regrets.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Gasper.
So, normally, you know, we read resignation letters from boards and committees, and, you know, everybody means a lot to me for serving the public. This one's kind of a heartbreaker, right? Ryan Resendes, you're an incredible man. You served that Conservation Commission with commitment, intellect, common sense, most importantly. He's just an incredible individual, the way he represented conservation. This is a heartbreaking loss, I believe, to the town of Acushnet and our Conservation Commission.
Agreed.
I'd just also like to make note that Mr. Resendes is staying on until January 16th. He does have some unfinished business, so to speak, to take care of, that he wants to see through. I'd like to say, wish him the best of luck, and I hope to see him again soon in any other position in town.
I'm not doing a second. I don't want him to go. So it's on you two guys.
All right.
He's incredible.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kelly.
the staff wants to inform the board because we have 2 upcoming vacancies on the commission
Yep.
that we're going to be advertising ASAP.
Yep.
Because having 2, and we're not sure what's going to happen, and I know that at least 1, if not 2, of the members takes a bit of time off in the winter time to go south, and I'm concerned about a quorum.
Sure.
So we want to advertise ASAP.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I think for anybody who's interested, Ryan's shoes aren't gonna be easy to fill, right? I think I just made that comment, but if there's anybody within this community can find it in their heart to volunteer for the Conservation Commission that is solid on protecting our lands, waterfront, you know, the rivers, streams, and things of the like, and you have an overwhelming desire to do such things and enforce the Wetlands Protection Act, please come forward. It'll be truly commendable if we can get somebody who has the same passion as Mr. Resendes. Thank you.
All right. Gentlemen, anything, selectmen announcements?
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask if we could have the town planner in the next selectmen's meeting to discuss that bylaw. I think they put out a bylaw and a memo on the ADUs, I think it's called, with that Moore Healy thing, some about, I don't know, we already allow it through ZBA or whatever, but she can come in and discuss what's going on in that bylaw to the board. I think she owes it to the Board of Selectmen, seeing that we're responsible for the warrant, to discuss that. And
She
see.
actually requested it a couple weeks ago. It is currently scheduled for the December 3rd meeting.
Okay, very good.
I think what's, just to get ahead of it, what I like about it is there's language in there that would do away with short-term rentals.
Yep.
And I think that's probably the biggest threat for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
We'll see what, I haven't gone through it, but we'll see what it's all about, what this versus what the state's doing, right?
Yep.
Trying to dictate now how we're gonna do our zoning, which I think is pretty awful that the state's infringing on municipalities, but neither here or there. And the only other thing I got on the selectmen's announcements is Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Be safe.
Well, we're on the issue of housing. I did see an article today in the New Bedford Light about, the gentleman from the city of New Bedford, essentially saying the suburbs need to do more. I'd like to extend an invitation to that gentleman,
Agreed.
who I think is a good guy. I don't know much about him other than what I've read, but I think it would be, Acushnet, when dealing with the city of New Bedford, is typically on the short end of the stick, right? Our residents are paying a higher sewer and water rate. There's other things that I'm sure if we really scoured. I think unless we can solve those inequities,
Yeah.
then maybe we can have a conversation about housing. But until then, I think it's a gross assumption to do that.
I agree. I didn't want to dive into the legs of that article, but I did catch it and it did fire me up a little bit. Maybe I'll read it tonight.
Makes me laugh, right? We as taxpayers have spent our tax dollars, and our parents have spent their tax dollars building this community. Now you have outsiders that want to come in and try to tell us what to do with our land in our town. Have a nice day. Good luck with that at town meeting. That ain't happening. But anyways,
One good thing about this town and having a town meeting is there's a lot of people that feel really good about living in Acushnet, and
of course,
they have the ultimate say, so.
it's what we built this community to be, right?
Yep.
And I've said it numerous times. Don't try to make our town a city.
Yep. All right, so just to reiterate for mine, I will say, anybody in interest at all for conservation, please send us at the Board of Selectmen a letter of interest. And also check out the town website for any other openings in any other boards or committees. We are going to executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A4, to discuss the deployment of or strategy regarding security personnel or devices, cybersecurity, and the board will not return to public session at the conclusion of the executive session. Is there a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Gasper?
Yes.
I am a yes.